Hey there, movie lovers. Welcome to another swell episode of the Movie Theater Lobby. I'm Brandon, and with me as always is the cat's pajamas when it comes to spilling the juice on showbiz, our big cheese.
Leia, and today slip on your glad rags and pour yourself a giggle water, cause we're taking a hop back to the roaring 20s with a razzmatazing, toe-tapping, jazz-slinging musical masterpiece.
This flick ain't just a bunch of applesauce. It's full of hotcha numbers, jazz babies, and more murder than you can shake a stick at. So, let's do the Charleston straight into the razzle-dazzle world of
Chicago!
And now, here they are, Chicago's own killer dillers, those scintillating sinners, Roxy Hart and Velma Kelly.
Chicago, a 2002 musical drama crime
Fun
adventure thing. The band leader counts us in, and the jazz is in full swing. A crowded club is where our misadventures and murder begins. The bar manager seeks the Kelly sisters, the it girls that put the butts in the seats and the moolah in the lockbox. Legging it up the street is a woman we will come to know as Velma Kelly, played by Catherine Zeta-Jones. Obviously, she's one of the missing Kelly sisters. When the manager asks her where Veronica is, Velma responds with the quip,
"Don't sweat it, I can do it alone."
Looking on with stars in her eyes. As Velma performs a song and dance to the tune All That Jazz is Roxy Hart, played by Renee Zellweger. Roxy and her dapper fella leave the club, and passions fly as she is assured that she has an in with the club owner by the guy that's leading her on. I mean, up the stairs to her apartment walk-up. As sex and the song both reach their climax.
Say it again.
We fade to black and cut to life again a month later. Roxy is once again with her slick beau, and we find out in so many words that she is being unfaithful to her husband with this man named Fred. And she finds out that Fred is full of baloney. He doesn't have connections with the club, and he lied about it only to get in her bloomers. And now that he's had his fun, it's over between the two. Overcome with anger, Roxy grabs a bean shooter from the drawer and lets him have it. Within an hour, the fuzz arrives, secures the scene, and gets a confession from Amos, played by John C. Reilly, Roxy's husband. He's a sucker who takes the fall for Roxy, claiming self-defense against a burglar. Just when it seems everyone is in the clear, a tough bull shows up and asks the hard questions. Within moments, the crux is found and Amos folds like a house of cards, throwing Roxy completely under the bus. The truth all comes out, and Roxy is dragged down to the slammer. As Roxy gets booked into the pen, she's going to meet Mama Morton, played by Queen Latifah.
The mistress of Murderers Row, matron Mama Morton.
I don't know about you, but I got no interest in spending time in the clink. Let's leave Roxy and the many murderers of 1920s Chicago, while they all vie for attention from the best lawyer in town, Billy Flynn, played by Richard Gere.
Billy Flynn. He's only the best criminal lawyer in all of Illinois.
Without further ado, cast and crew time.
This one's a little different. There's going to be some layers because it started off as a play and then turned into a musical and then became a musical that was a movie. Mm-hmm. And so it went through kind of a
couple
transformation of sorts.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is start with talking just a little bit about Maureen Dallas Watkins because she's kind of the one who started this whole process. But Maureen Dallas Watkins was a reporter for the Chicago Tribune in the 20s. And she actually got the idea for writing the play Chicago by using the stories that she had covered as a reporter. So she wrote the character Mary Sunshine actually as a self-portrait of herself even.
Right.
It was originally just a play. It wasn't a musical. Then Bob Fosse got a hold of it. He actually grew up in Chicago, so I'm sure there was some self-interest there in terms of wanting to be part of this. His wife, Gwen Verdon, is actually the one who came up with the idea to make Chicago a musical. Or she never got any of the credit for it.
Of course not. Because men.
Yeah, because men. Because her husband, Bob Fosse, took all the credit for it. By 1975, they had created a musical based on Chicago. And it would have been Bob Fosse and John Kander. John Kander being the composer for it. But Bob Fosse is the one who came up with, he's the one who directed and choreographed the musical for Chicago. He co-wrote the book with Fred Ebb, and Fred Ebb also wrote the lyrics. But interestingly, John Kander and Fred Ebb actually were partners together for a very, very long time. So they're all kind of interconnected. John Kander actually met Fred Ebb in 1962 when they became like a permanent team together. And they've been associated with writing material for Liza Minnelli, Cheetah Riviera, including musicals like Zorba, Chicago, The Rink, and Kiss of the Spider Woman. Cute little story. He actually met his long-term partner, Albert Stevenson, in 1977, but didn't actually get to marry him until 2010. John Kander's actually still alive today.
Okay.
He is 98 years old.
Hey, that a boy.
So he is still kicking.
Yeah.
He's one of the very few, if not the only one out of this group, I think, that's still alive. Bob Fosse is actually kind of interesting. He worked in a burlesque theater at the age of 13, and the erotica that he saw in these burlesque shows is kind of what inspired all of his future work. In 1943, when he was only 15, he actually choreographed his very first dance number, and he earned his first full credit as a choreographer for the film Hold Everything, a streamlined extravaganza in 2 parts, which featured showgirls sporting strapless dresses and performing a fan dance. And of course, that was all inspired by his work at 13 in a burlesque theater. I guess he got a lot of crap from people who thought it was inappropriate for him to be working in a burlesque theater at 13, but the burlesque dancers stood up for him, told him he was, they liked having him there. He also did cabaret and All That Jazz, and he actually earned the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival for All That Jazz. So after Bob Fosse created the Chicago musical, it ran on Broadway in 1975 for a long time.
Yeah, quite a while. That 96 revival ran forever.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's right. There was a revival in 96. Yep. It's the longest running, I think, revival.
Yep.
Still running today.
As far as I know.
It is. I looked it up.
Oh, nice.
It's still going today.
Definitively, yes.
So definitively, it is still running today. So it is the longest running revival. Rob Marshall, he's done several theater productions between 1983 and 2014, including 2 productions of Cabaret. But this was his first theatrical movie. And then he did Memoirs of a Geisha, which I had no idea. Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides he did. He also did the 2023 version of The Little Mermaid.
The Disney live action.
The Disney live action one. Mary Poppins Returns is actually the only film that he directed, produced, choreographed, and wrote the story for.
All the fingers.
All the fingers in the pot, yeah. He actually got into directing and choreographing when he herniated a disc while he was in the Broadway musical Cats.
Oh, yeah, because he was a dancer for a long time.
He was the actual performer for a long time, and then he hurt himself and couldn't perform anymore, so he just kind of naturally segued into teaching others to perform.
Into getting behind the scenes.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, he was born right here in the home state of Wisconsin.
That's right, not too far away.
In Madison, so.
He works a lot with his husband, the producer John DeLuca.
A lot of the people involved in this production are actually from the Midwest, a lot of them being from Chicago. Maureen Dallas Watkins, obviously from Chicago. Mm-hmm. Bob Fosse grew up in Chicago. I believe John Kander also was in Chicago for a time. I mean, obviously they were probably all in Chicago for a time because they all worked together. So let's start with Renee Zellweger. I consider her the lead.
I would say so, yeah. In my opinion, yes, Roxy is the more lead character, especially in this theatrical version, because the musical numbers all sort of take place in her head, aside from a few.
Yeah, well, and that's how it was explicitly written. Yep. When Rob Marshall brought this story to Miramax, he was actually asked to do Rent. Mm-hmm. And then he said, well, I would love to. I would love
Rent
it.
Is great.
It'd be great. But I have this idea for Chicago, but from Roxy's perspective.
To kind of further cement the idea that Roxy may be kind of the lead character is in 1927, before Bob Fosse got to make the stage play into a musical, Cecil B. DeMille got a hold of the ability to make the stage play into a movie starring Ginger Rogers. So that was in 1927. And it was titled Roxy Hart. Not Chicago.
Catherine actually did have the opportunity to play Roxy. She didn't want to play Roxy because she wanted to sing All That Jazz, and All That Jazz is Velma's number.
Yeah.
So she ended up playing Velma instead.
All That Jazz is a great number. So, I mean, if you're going to want to perform any particular one, why the hell not? That's a great song.
Watching the movie now, I mean, I couldn't see them in different roles. I think they were perfect for their roles.
And Catherine is the older of the two.
She is, and that's how it was.
Velma does seem like the older of the two characters. Roxy does seem rather young and experienced.
Well, and that was the whole point, right?
Yep.
I mean, it was perfect. And even down to how the characters were written into the film. Renee Zellweger does not have strong background in singing and dancing, whereas Catherine Zeta-Jones actually does have an extremely strong background in singing and dancing. And they wanted that to actually be seen in the film, you know, even though Renee gave it her all, 110,000%, and she worked her ass off. She still was the least experienced of the two, and it shows in the film, but that's what they wanted it to be. They wanted it to look like that because she was aspiring to be Velma.
Renee used Catherine Zeta-Jones's performances to help kind of inspire and inform her own on stage.
On top of that, she did 10 months of grueling vocal coaching and dancing with a trainer before.
That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
For anyone who may not know Renee Zellweger, which probably who doesn't, you may notice her from Bridget Jones' Diary, probably her most popular
famous
movies.
One. Jerry Maguire,
Empire Records. One of my personal favorites, Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation.
That was her first starring role.
Was.
So, and she was also in Me, Myself, and Irene. I think most recently, a really cool role she played was Judy Garland in the biopic Judy, which she won an Academy Award for Best Actress for. All right. Catherine Zeta-Jones. I remember when we were watching the movie, I had said something about her neck.
Yeah.
And I was like, she's got like a little tracheotomy scar or something going on. When I was doing research on her, I found that as she was a child, she was actually exposed to a virus that gave her breathing difficulties. Yeah. So she was required to have a tracheotomy surgery, which left that little scar on her neck.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, that makes sense now. I know why she has it.
And she doesn't ever particularly try to hide it or cover it up.
Both her and Renee, fun little story, auditioned for the role of Satine in Moulin Rouge. I'm glad that Nicole Kidman got it because I thought she did really well.
She did a really great job in that.
If anybody doesn't know, that's my favorite musical. So that's why I had to bring it up.
If you look at the promotional posters, usually when you look at promotional posters, the names are kind of in a line, you know, even if they're at different ends of the poster, they're same level in a line, right?
Yeah.
On the Chicago posters, the names are offset. One is higher than the other. And of course, they're both on different sides of the poster. The managers for each actor had such a disagreement over who gets top billing. Production company said, okay, screw it. We're going to put one name on the left, one on the right, one up above, one below. So that way, if you read the poster from top to bottom, Renee Zellweger gets top billing. If you read it from left to right, Catherine Zeta-Jones gets top billing. It's
so silly.
So goofy.
I honestly don't think in the end either of them really cared. I think it was more about their...
I think it was more just the managers trying to get more notoriety and money.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that was nice of them.
That's what managers are for. That's their whole job.
Right. Producer Martin Richards actually decided to cast Catherine Zeta-Jones when he heard her sing at a Christmas party. That they were at a house in the Bermudas, I believe, is where their house was. Okay. And I guess Martin Richards is a friend of both she and Michael Douglas's. And she was singing Christmas carols at the piano, and he heard her, and he was like, you know, I am doing this, I don't know if you ever heard of it, Chicago. He asked her if she wanted to do the role of Roxy Hart. Catherine, I guess at the time, was not familiar with the original show, but she did know that the character Velma Kelly sang All That Jazz, which we had talked about, yeah. So she turned down Roxy Hart, and that's how she ended up getting the role of Velma Kelly. Yeah. Another thing that I thought was kind of interesting about Catherine Zeta-Jones, too, is she wore really short black hair. And she was saying that she was asked to wear her long, her naturally long.
She typically has long
really
hair.
Beautiful long hair. She didn't want it to take away from people seeing how her body moved and say that she didn't do some of those moves.
Yeah, like it was a body double.
Like it was a body double or something. So she insisted on having really short hair so you could very clearly see her face, and you knew that she was doing all of the choreography and dancing herself.
There were a few times they did use a body double because
she was pregnant.
She was pregnant. So once she started to show a little bit, whenever they were filming her from the front, it was waist up typically. And then from behind, sometimes they would get in a double to do the move for her. And Catherine, of course, Mask of Zorro, Legend of Zorro. Those were some early entries. Entrapment, which she's pretty well known for. The Haunting, High Fidelity, Ocean's 12, and then recently in the Wednesday series as Morticia.
All right, so let's move on to Richard Tiffany Gere.
Oh, right. An unusual middle name, but I like it.
Yeah, I think I read it was from his mom's side or something
Yeah.
like that. I just thought it was interesting, so I put that in there. He's actually an accomplished pianist and musical writer.
Yeah, and guitarist.
He has an extensive guitar collection that he's been collecting since his youth. He actually even composed and performed the piano solo that was featured in Pretty Woman from 1990. He's also an accomplished gymnast.
Which is awesome.
Which is just awesome.
Yeah, I love that.
He actually got a scholarship to the University of Massachusetts Amherst for gymnastics. And he actually ended up majoring in philosophy, which isn't actually at all unsurprising considering he is really into Buddhism. He is Harvard University's Hasty Pudding Theatrical's 2006 Man of the Year. And
okay.
The only reason I brought it up is because I've never heard of that. But Renee Zellweger is also a Harvard University's Hasty Pudding Theatrical's 2009 Woman of the Year.
The Hasty Pudding Theatrical, it's a social club.
Harvard Social Club?
Like a theatrical social club, yeah. Richard Gere, just as a quick little mention on him, An Officer and a Gentleman, which of course led into Pretty Woman. If you're going to think of a Richard Gere movie,
it's going to be Pretty Woman.
Pretty Woman. Primal Fear, of course, The Jackal, which was pretty well received.
You know, his family encouraged him to do Chicago because apparently he's been known for being very serious and not and a particularly funny person.
Not typically.
Yeah. And his family is like, he's hilarious.
Yeah,
and they wanted everybody to see that side of him. So they really encouraged him to do this one because it kind of shows his more
carefree
and kind of silly side.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, Billy Flynn is
he's a
very
goofy guy.
serious character, but he's goofy.
Yeah.
He's full of quips and quick comebacks and just a line a minute kind of guy. Yeah,
very engaging and interesting fella. Whereas in his other movies, he's a great actor. Don't get me wrong.
But very serious.
Yeah. And his family's like, you got to do this because we know you're funny. We got to give a little bit of love to Queen Latifah. She's actually the first female rapper to earn an Academy Award nomination for her role in this film.
Oh, she was so wonderful in this film.
She was fantabulous in this film. I mean,
obviously everybody knows she's got a voice, but she was able to really show it off in this movie.
Before she played Matron Mama Morton in Chicago, she had not done any musical theater since high school. Obviously, doing music videos and performing, it's going to transition into that pretty easily. But you would not have been able to tell she was not in musical theater because she was so good. And then the other one I want to just touch on real quick is John C. Reilly. He's another one who grew up in Chicago. He does perform and he is a singer and he came from a musical theater background. He did all of his own singing in Chicago, which you don't usually equate John C. Reilly with singing.
No, he's not the first guy I would have thought of.
No. You also don't really equate him with clowns either.
Right, not typically.
But he has quite an affection for clowns.
Yeah.
He actually made a home video of himself singing in a bow tie and a suit for director Rob Marshall in order to get his role in Chicago. He's actually been collecting clown paintings from the 50s and 60s ever since his wife gifted him one in the 90s.
Oh, so you mean the extra creepy clown paintings?
Yes, the extra creepy ones. Since 2018, he's amassed almost 100 paintings.
Ooh.
They all live in his office.
Okay.
I imagine his wife was a little sad that she bought him his first one.
Because
she probably doesn't go in that office. I wouldn't.
Yeah, you do not like clowns.
I don't like clowns. I'm not a big clown fan. John C. Reilly actually dressed as a clown, kind of like a sort of tramp character to make cash when he was a kid.
Yeah, when he was like 13.
He was like 13. Yeah, it was really little. He learned the trade through his church group. Yeah. And his church group actually organized all the performances.
Church groups, also not a thing I typically associate with clowning.
No, not really. But that's where he got that from. He insisted on designing his own clown makeup for the Mr. Cellophane scene. And it was also even his idea to incorporate it in putting his own makeup on. Like Amos is putting his makeup on.
The makeup used in that scene it's not overdone. Like when you picture a clown, it's not overdone in that
like
style.
A tramp clown.
Yeah, like a tramp clown. And it's understated enough because it fits that
Amos's
it's a song
character.
About his character being ignored and passed over and seen through.
Completely passed over, yeah.
So the understated makeup really served that.
John C. Reilly also did a lot of research for his character, which I think is interesting because, okay, so John C. Reilly's character is not very...
Not huge.
It's not huge, but that's the whole point, right? But he still did a lot of prepping for this role. In order to portray Amos, he actually emulated Emmett Kelly, Burt Lahr, Charlie Chaplin, Dick Van Dyke. He also researched Burt Williams. He's an iconic Black entertainer that John Kander and Fred Ebb actually used as their inspiration for Amos.
Yeah, like an early vaudevillian performer.
Yep. Mr. Cellophane is actually a loose parody of Burt Williams' song "Nobody," which I listened to, and I can totally see it.
Yeah, I listened to it as well.
So should we move on to some of the acclaim?
Yeah,
of
let's
the
get
film?
in there.
So this film had some long legs.
Sure did. In the film and out of the film,
Yeah,
I guess.
right? Very leggy film. 13.43 legs, so it's pretty high, with an opening weekend of about $2 million. Domestic box office, it did almost 171 million. Worldwide, it did almost 307 million. On a production budget that's estimated at about 45 million.
It's funny because the studio and even Rob Marshall weren't expecting this film to be
as good,
significant.
Yeah.
By conventional standards, it opened in very few cinemas across the country.
In the awards, I mean, I wrote down a bunch of awards. I'm not going to go through them all.
Right, yeah.
There's
just so many.
They did get 13 nominations at the Academy Awards, winning 6 of those nominations, with Catherine Zeta-Jones getting Best Actress in a Supporting Role, which is another nod to the fact that she was the supporting role in the film. But, there was also Queen Latifah got Best Actress for the BET Awards. They had BAFTA Awards. They got 3 wins at the Critics' Choice Awards, the Golden Globes, the Grammy Awards, the Screen Actors Guild Awards. The only one I'm surprised that they didn't get is that they don't have an entry in the Library of Congress.
Not yet. There's
they
still
might.
time.
Yeah, they might. But I feel like this one should be in there.
It did win Best Picture at the Oscars.
Right. For a musical, that's impressive.
Yeah. The odd part is, as much money as it made, it didn't make it to number 1 during its box office run. It actually peaked at number 3. But if you look at the other movies that were out between that November and January, it's understandable why.
Yeah.
You had Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. Okay. Seems like a beast.
That one's beat out a few of our films,
on that one.
to be honest.
Catch Me If You Can, which of course was a huge monster that year. Made in Manhattan, that romantic comedy just pulled in the cash. Of course, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets.
Oh my God.
And then, that's just kind of the top few.
That just makes the achievements that this film made that much better because those are huge films.
It seems understandable that it peaked at 3. And critically as well, it kind of ranged from the lower 8s to the lower 9s. So right in that kind of mid-8 range-ish. Mm-hmm. Nobody really came out and said they hated it. It was typically pretty lauded for musical numbers, of course, the actors and actresses, the writing was so, I mean, all around, it was a pretty well-liked film.
It wasn't exactly like the play. So there were some differences between the play and the movie, but they were like necessary changes. I mean, otherwise they wouldn't have been able to make the movie in the amount of time that they made it. One of the major ones was their portrayal of the reporter Mary Sunshine. Mary Sunshine was actually was played by a man dressed up as a woman, and at the end she takes her wig off. In an interview in a magazine, the woman who plays Mary Sunshine is Christine Baranski. She actually expressed really a lot of regret for her role in this film because she took it away from a drag queen. That's how she felt about it. And she said she decided that the character she was playing was gay and that it was her little secret and it was one of those fabulous 1920s lesbians. That was her way of trying to make it. Yeah, so she felt bad that she took it from somebody who could have been, a drag queen doing it instead.
I'll just throw in here, as I've been doing lately, the tagline.
The taglines.
With the right song and dance, you can get away with murder.
So true.
So true.
I've done it so many times.
Of course you have. Notorious.
Maybe not getting away with murder, but...
Well, song and dance regardless.
Yeah.
Gets you out of every situation. And then, if you can't be famous, be infamous.
I love that one.
Which, both of those are very appropriate to the whole
Those are words to live by.
Certainly. I'm still trying to be infamous. I don't think I'll ever meet fame. Might as well find me some infamy somewhere. Don't know when I'll figure out the right approach.
Yeah, well, don't murder anyone.
Well, I'll try not to.
Okay. All right, can we move on a little bit of the inspiration for the film? Because I
Sure.
am dying to talk.
I know you are.
I'm dying to talk about this. So we had talked about Maureen Dallas Watkins being the reporter for Chicago Tribune. She covered a couple of the cases that inspired her to write this play. Two of those cases are Beulah Annan and Belva Gardner, who inspired Roxy and Velma, respectively. The film takes place during Prohibition. Prohibition was kind of meant to make society better by kind of removing the temptations of booze and jazz and moral depravity of civilization. These two things kind of went hand in hand, and it was sought as being...
There was a whole belief that jazz and liquor is going to turn the whole society corrupt, and everyone's going to start killing and raping each other, and was it demonized by a bunch of idiots back in the day.
Yeah, well, and ironically, it increased crime and made things worse. It created these underground establishments for bootlegging, gambling, and prostitution. So Prohibition made things worse. Yeah. On March 12th, 1924, the dead body of Walter Law was discovered. So Law was found sprawled on the front seat of Belva Gardner's car with a bottle of gin and a gun lying beside him. Gardner was a 29-year-old woman who was previously married and currently engaged in an affair with Law. The police would eventually discover the drunken Gardner in her apartment and on the floor nearby some bloody clothing. Gardner would admit to being with Law on the night in question, but also claimed to have been drunk and possessing no memory of what happened. After a period of questioning involving members of Law's family, Gardner was indicted and she was held in Cook County Jail on murderous row.
Sounds familiar.
She was acquitted with a defense that her lover must have killed himself. And this is a direct quote from her. "No woman can love a man enough to kill him. They aren't worth it because they're always plenty more. Walter was just a kid, 29, and I'm 38. Why would I have worried whether he loved me or whether he left me? Gin and guns. Either one is bad enough, but together they get you in a dickens of a mess, don't they?" Less than a month later, Beulah Annan actually joined her. Annan was a 24-year-old from Kentucky, and on April 3rd of 1924, she shot and killed Harry Caldstead. She invited him to bring her wine. They had jazz, which is sex, on the couch. And after a bit too much to drink, they got into a heated argument over the fact that he had been lying to her and everyone else about his past. I guess at some point, Caldstead jumped up, and she said that they both, quote, beat it for the bedroom, where they simultaneously reached for a gun on the bed. She, of course, got to the gun first, and she shot him. There's also another claim that she shot him and left him dying on the floor, gasping for his few final breaths while she danced around the apartment and listened to music until her husband had returned hours later. It's actually a false claim. The coroner, in fact, determined that he died instantly because the bullet had passed through his heart. Belva was acquitted. She went on to have a few more run-ins with the law, but ended up living in a semi-normal life. She died of natural causes in California in 1965 at the age of 80. So she kind of went on to live a little bit of a longer life. Beulah, however, sadly had kind of a grisly end. While it was true she was acquitted for murdering her lover, thanks to the highly paid attorney who was financed by her husband, she actually repaid that debt by publicly divorcing him, just like in the movie. And then she married 2 more times before she died from tuberculosis 4 years later.
The respective lawyers, William Scott Stewart and W.W. O'Brien, Maureen had smashed those two guys together
collectively
to create Billy Flynn.
Yeah.
It's literally so directly inspired by those events.
It is, yeah. And, in the 20s in Chicago, it wasn't just those two women. There were a lot of bad things happening. These were just two that Maureen had remembered and decided to write about. This film has several murders in it. It has a total of 14, actually. But the interesting part is that it focuses on women murdering all of the murders with the exception of one. But it's not really murder. It's quote unquote justice.
Yeah, depending where you put your penny down on the definition of murder.
Agreed. And that was, of course, intentional because this is all about murderesses in prison. So there's Fred Casely. There's the 7 victims of Roxy's cellmates. Hunyuk, when she was hanged. Mm-hmm. There's 3 people killed by Kitty Baxter, the husband and lawyer of the woman on the courthouse steps. Mm-hmm. So all except for Hunyuk are killing done by women.
Yeah. So there's obviously that big cell block tango number,
I love that.
right?
The
Such
whole
such a
scene.
great performance.
I'll probably say that about every scene that you bring
Yeah,
up.
probably.
But anyway.
Pop. 6. Squish. Cicero. Lip shits.
When you watch the musical number, you see the women dancing with their male partners, kind of explaining how they ended up killing their partners. Each of them have a little red scarf to sort of insinuate, okay, here's when the
I
murder
did it.
happens, the blood comes out.
I
blah, blah,
killed
blah.
him.
So one of the characters, they refer to her as Squish because she tells the Squish story, right? When she pulls out her red scarf, it's this really long scarf. They gave her an extra long one because hers was the most violent of the bunch. She stabbed her partner 10 times. So it was just sort of a way to give greater emphasis on the amount of blood that would have come from her particular crime. There's another one which is sort of unique. The character referred to as Six. So she is talking about how her partner had 6 wives. He was a Mormon, and she found out he's been lying to her. He said he was single. So she decided to kill him using arsenic. Well, while she's telling her story, the male partner's kind of lying on the ground and she's kind of straddled over top of him. And at the end, she sort of reaches down to give him a kiss, and when she raises her head up, she pulls a scarf out of his mouth with hers and saying that some men can't hold their arsenic. The one other one that, I mean, they all have their own kind of unique ways, but the one that's really unique among the bunch is the character often referred to as or sometimes call her Hanyak. When she's singing her part, the music slows a little bit, and
it's soft.
She's lit in a soft white light, whereas everyone else is lit with a blue light until they reveal their crime. Then it's a red. She sings in Hungarian.
Yeah.
So we don't actually, unless you know Hungarian, you probably don't know exactly what she's saying. There's no subtitles, and it's purposeful. It's not meant to be subtitled. The translation, what am I doing here? They say my neighbor grabbed my husband and I hit him in the head, but it's not true. I'm innocent. I don't know why Uncle Sam says I did it. I tried to explain it to police, but they didn't understand. So it's her just kind of telling, hey, I'm innocent. I didn't do it. The other sort of really significant parts is that everyone else is doing, as the song title implies, a tango, but hers is a set of ballet moves, often referred to as like a pas de deux. When she explains how her partner died, she pulls out a clear white scarf. It's meant to just really try to drum up emotion for this particular character because she is a foreigner who can't speak English, and she's being literally persecuted for being a foreigner and basically nothing else.
You know, at the beginning of the movie, there's a scene where they introduce matron Mama Morton to all the new inmates. Roxy Hart briefly has a conversation with a woman smoking a cigarette.
Ever had Morton before? She's fine. Long as you keep her happy.
That character is actually played by longtime Broadway actress Chita Rivera, who actually played Velma Kelly in the original 1975 production of Chicago. Did you know that director Rob Marshall actually wanted to cast Kathy Bates in that role? I think it would have worked.
Yeah, I could see that.
I'm glad that Queen Latifah got to do it. Kathy Bates was actually scheduled to film about Schmidt, so she wasn't able to do this film. But the cool part is that they were both nominated for Best Actress in a supporting role. Queen Latifah for Chicago and Kathy Bates for About Schmidt. They both got these nominations.
They still got some nominations.
Yeah, even though they made different choices.
Yeah.
There's not very many men in this film. John C. Reilly, Richard Gere. Those are our two main men. Totally different, like opposite characters.
Oh, yeah. Very different opposites.
Well, yeah, one is not very well seen. The other one, everybody knows who he is, you know. Richard Gere has like a tap scene at the end. And while we know he's a gymnast and he's a good singer,
he's got
he can
body
dance.
Control. Sure, yeah.
He's not a tap dancer.
It is a different skill.
Yeah. He said this was the most challenging part of this film for him, was having to learn how to tap. I read that he spent 3 months doing it. The wiki says he did 5 months doing it.
Regardless, it's a lot of time.
Regardless, either way, he spent a lot of time doing it. He also said that he was shy about doing it. He didn't want to perform in front of anybody. So for 3 to 5 months, he stayed in a room with his tap dance instructor. But they were getting towards the end of shooting for the day, and that was the last thing they had to do. It was at the end of the day. He got out there. He just did it. Said it took him about 2 hours to get it done. And I guess everybody, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Renee Zellweger, they're like blown away because they were like, wow, we didn't know you had been practicing. I mean, we knew you'd been practicing for a long time because apparently he had a nickname. I can't remember what it was now, but he'd get really like angry and yell and scream when he couldn't get a movement down.
Oh, yeah.
And even though he was behind a closed door, they could all hear him, but he didn't know they could all hear him. So they would actually kind of make fun of him on the other side of the door. He said, I just had to like not be shy anymore because it had to get done.
Yeah, it had to be done.
Had to rip that Band-Aid off someday.
And that whole scene, it's him on a theater stage. Mm-hmm. Completely darkened, lit just by spotlight.
Him and
just
his thoughts.
Just dancing. It's a great scene, but at least for his self-consciousness, it wasn't a packed scene.
I did read that Danny Elfman actually wrote 15 minutes of the score for Chicago. He only wrote 15 minutes, and it wasn't a full score or anything, but I think it was like transition scores and things like that. His specialty is actually considered to be late 1920s, early 1930s music. The music that he created for this film really fluidly fit right into the original songs, the original show's songs.
Have a little Elfman in your production.
Big names in this film, you know?
Speaking of names, there's a few people in this movie, besides Chita Rivera, a few people in this production who had appeared in the revival of Chicago. Taye Diggs, who was the band leader.
Mm-hmm. He's got a cool role because like when you first get introduced to him, it's in the real world. And then after that, it's all of basically the introduction to all of the different numbers.
Roxy sees him introduce Velma Kelly on stage in not her imagination.
In real life, yeah.
And then she uses him as the mental introduction to all the numbers in her head.
Yeah.
But aside from Taye Diggs, you had Deidre Goodwin, Denise Faye, and Sebastian Lacause were all dancers in the cell block tango sequence.
Gosh, so much talent in that cell block one, too. Oh my God. Well, if you have nothing else, I have one last little nod that I think I need to put out there. It's a nod to Robin Williams.
I was not expecting a Robin Williams.
So Robin Williams wasn't in this film.
No.
He was in a film called Birdcage. And when I first watched Birdcage, I didn't know what this stuff meant. I just thought it was cute that he was saying it. But he's in a scene where he's trying to explain to the actor how to feel in a scene. And the other actor looks at him and says, well, what do I do? To which Robin Williams replies, you do Fosse, Fosse, Fosse. You do Martha Graham, Martha Graham, Martha Graham. Or Twyla, Twyla, Twyla. Michael Kidd, Michael Kidd, Michael Kidd, Michael Kidd. I remember watching that and going,
what
okay.
What the hell is he talking about?
And then when we did the research for this, I'm like, Fosse. I wonder if it's the same Fosse that he was talking about in Birdcage, because that's about, doing stage performances in burlesque. And it goes together really
very
well.
Musical.
It is, obviously. Mm-hmm. And all of these other people are actually Fosse is intertwined with all of these people because they're all choreographers, they're all directors, they're all into stage plays and musicals. I mean, they're all influential in jazz and musicals and
fun little nod, like
fun little nod, because Robin Williams is amazing.
Yeah,
and
he is.
That film is actually pretty good.
Well, yeah, I guess that means we didn't have a band here, but I envision this is about the time when the band would be wrapping up. They'd be closing their cases, putting the little cover down on the piano,
kicking back their drinks, putting out their cigarettes,
collecting their tips, and getting the hell out of here. Which is probably what we should start doing.
All right, I suppose at some point you got to do it.
Yeah, no, and I'm feeling a little tired from all the tap dancing I didn't do. I think it's
mental tap dancing.
Yeah, mental tap dancing for sure. But since I am feeling a little bit winded from all of my non-existent tap dancing, why don't you please tell everyone where they can find us after the show is done?
Absolutely. Please check us out at themovietheaterlobby.com. You can email us at themovietheaterlobby@gmail.com. And you can find us on socials, usually mostly at The Movie Lobby on Blue Sky. But you can also find us at The Movie Theater Lobby on YouTube. We do have other socials. We don't check them as much, but you can always pop in there. I do check them occasionally. So
I haven't checked them in months.
I don't post on them, though, to be honest. So I would say Blue Sky is going to be your best bet.
That's going to be the primary spot.
Yeah.
Wherever you listen to us, please subscribe, like, share, review, comment, whatever you're going to do there. Give us a little attention. Be nice. Yeah. And then, of course, as we always say, please share with everybody you know if you think they can deal with us. And then, of course, if you want to find me on Blue Sky, Brand MC. But Leia, sometimes people like to find you too. Where do they find you?
You can find me, as usual and always, Leia McClevey, at LM Nerdroom on all of the previously mentioned socials and at lmnerdroom@gmail.com.
And of course, we got to tell you what's coming up next week. We go from This week, a little bit of fun, kind of fantasy in your head, kind of imagination to a world full of surrealism and unusualness. Leia, do you want to tell them what movie that is?
Well, I think it's about gosh darn time we did Inland Empire.
Yeah. Get a little David Lynch flavor up in here.
A little Lynch flavor, especially seeing as how he passed not long ago.
Yeah.
I think it's time to do a Lynch film.
I think so, too.
Yep.
I'm excited. I haven't seen that movie in a bit. I'm
Yeah.
really happy to rewatch it again. All right. Well, now that everyone knows what's coming up next week, thank you, everyone, for listening whenever you do. And then, of course, Leia, thank you.
Thank you,
for joining
Brandon.
me here today to talk about Chicago.
It was so fun.
Yeah, it was a good time.
It's nice to break out the jazz hands every once in a while.
Jazz hands, and you got a little
And the
true
Fosse, Fosse,
crime.
Fosse.
Yeah, and the Fosse. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We're going to let you go. Hopefully, we kept it a little shorter for you today. But we will see you next week when we reconvene for
The movie theater lobby.
Bye, everybody.
Come clean, Mr. Harrison, come clean. Even in Chicago, this kind of corruption cannot stand, will not stand.
That's enough, Mr. Flynn!
I agree, Your Honor. It is enough. The defense rests